You are a mutant in Xavier's school for gifted youngsters with the power to teleport. In reality, you can pause time and you're not ready to be an Omega-class mutant. In my defense, I didn't mean to lie, at least, not at first. There's just only so many answers you can give to one of the most powerful A-list mutants in the world, after she saves your entire class from death via careening down a mountain in the middle of a freak hurricane. And those answers all invariably include shutting your mouth and nodding when the motherfucking storm says she saw you teleport yourself and a couple classmates to safety. It's better than admitting you got tired of carrying them after the first three. So, it was off to Xavier's I went, with the blessing of my family. I think they were just relieved to realize our house wasn't actually haunted, and that all the moved furniture and missing snacks were due to their broody, rather not interact with anyone, if I could help it, teenager. It was just going to be for a year or so. Would include all the state-mandated tests and some top-class education, and was, if anything, more of a counseling situation. A way for young mutants to socialize with their peers. They conveniently left out the part where this socialization happened over literal battle training and in a place conveniently named the Danger Room. Yay. Shit. Add to that, it was the best and literal brightest mutants helping in this training, and I ended up trying to make a runner in the first night, and then got caught by the literal nightcrawler, who seemed to think I was just taking an evening walk, and offered to join me in something called teleporter solidarity. I politely declined. Pretty sure Professor Xavier told him to keep an eye out for me, because he was there a lot more often with very unsolicited advice like what hair gel to use to keep your hair from poofing up after what he called BAMF. Even gave me my own bottle, which was nice, I guess, but not enough to get me to risk life and limb on a regular basis. I had dedicated myself to coasting, and that was that. Caring was something they really couldn't get me to do, not when everyone else in my life had failed. Not when I knew that I was the only one in the world for whom every second was actually real. I aged while everyone was in stasis. I grew, they didn't. Ergo, my time was more important, so I lied. I told them that my teleporting powers had a max use of once a day and was therefore way too useless to be practical. In reality, all the finger-snapping needed to activate the time stops were just giving me carpal tunnel. The Wolverine guy was the only one who didn't seem to quite believe it, staring at me oddly after I'd told the class. He never said anything, though, leaving me to assume that even if he could smell lies, he didn't much care for exposing them. Probably was for the best when you taught a bunch of literal, superpowered, pubescent kids, most with delusions of grandeur. Not me, though. This whole mutant life was just not my style. Life or death situations on the daily constant stress, having to socialize with new people and more than likely save them. No. I'd take the worst class designation any day. They did their best to make the life look as exciting as possible. I'll give them that. But even weekly Q and A's after Danger Room sessions with elite mutants weren't enough to ruffle me. Most of those talks had to be rescheduled due to the latest world destruction event, others due to the fact they didn't even know which dimension so-and-so mutant was in this time. Real appealing. And then, there was the last one. The one Professor Xavier was meant to drop into. The one that freaking Sentinels decided to crash. The one I was skipping and didn't know about until a giant robot hand was 2 seconds away from crushing me. In the end, my entire desire for a simple life was pit against the option of a quick, brutal death and a release from all responsibilities. So, I didn't move. I think part of me just wanted it over with. That's when Nightcrawler Bamf Ed atop the robot and sent it flying sideways. That's when Wolverine grabbed me and started to run. That's when I saw the other Sentinel aim. That's when my entire desire for a simple life was pit against the option of the quick and brutal deaths of some of the nicest people I'd ever met in my life. So I froze time. I ended up having to nearly break Wolverine's arm to get loose, but figured he'd heal up fine. I MacGyvered a laser cannon from some scraps. Those Danger Room tutorial sessions really were useful, and blew the first Sentinel's head off. Then the second. I ended up clearing off the campus at some point, just to make sure. Then I took a deep breath and sat down on the front steps of the Institute, right beside where Professor Xavier was currently wheeled up. His hand was already at his temple, concentrating at was probably once a sea of sentinels, but was now just a bunch of scrap metal. I sighed deeply and gave a mental farewell to my days as the laziest class Omega bitch that ever existed, and snapped my fingers to let the world start spinning. The world spun, and boy, was it fast. I sat back and watched as the best heroes in the world launched their attacks at a whole lot of nothing. Beast almost ran into a wall, charging at the air where there used to be a sentinel. Cyclops took out an entire section of fancy ironwork fence doing the same. Wolverine's head was spinning, trying to look for something. Likely me. Oh, he really did care. It took a second for everyone to realize that the enemy was, for lack of a better word, absolutely obliterated. Over the yards of the Institute, a sudden quiet sunk in. "Don't look at me," said a red-haired woman standing by the far wall, who some people were eyeing strangely. Was that Jean freaking Summers? Maybe if I was lucky, everyone would be dumb enough to give Phoenix the credit. Professor Xavier knocked that dull hope out of me with a soft clearing of his throat. There's a way he does it that I can't quite explain. Some gravitas that had me sitting up straighter and the entire courtyard's attention on him in literal seconds. Some people clear their throat and it's annoying. Some people do it and it's just plain gross. When Charles fucking Xavier clears his throat, the freaking world stops to listen. That had to be its own mutant power, honestly. Probably came in handy with all the universe-saving speeches he had to give. "I believe our student here can explain," he said slowly, ridiculously blue eyes fixed on mine. "Isn't that right, Miriam?" I groaned and buried my head in my hands, partly to hide how red my face had gotten, and partly because among the looks of disbelief in the crowd were more than a few looks of betrayal. "Yes," I finally forced out, sounding more like, once it made it past my fingers. Professor Xavier decided to take pity on me at that moment, probably because he could literally see how close I was to freezing time and pulling another runner. "Let's talk in my office," was all I heard before there was a burst of smoke, and I was there, courtesy of Nightcrawler, who was currently standing beside the professor at his desk, and looking like I'd kicked his puppy. Guess teleporter solidarity was over now. I winced. Time to face the music, or the great responsibility, whatever the right metaphor was.